Hello, everybody. Welcome back into the channel. Inconsequential Runner here, delivering to you some really consequential information. Look, you know what this channel is all about. It's helping runners just enjoy their runs more. And to help us with that, we have Coach Mark. Hello, Coach Mark.
Oh, hi, Darcy. Good to see you.
Yeah, look, good to have you here. You know why we have you here. The runners, as part of this community, send me questions to ask you. And it's great to have a coach's perspective for a runner's question. And I think that's the point of difference here. All these questions are coming from runners, and we're delving into your vast knowledge to have these questions answered. So, look, on that, of course, if you like this video, you know what to do. Hit like, share it with your running buddies. If we're answering a question you think one of your running buddies needs an answer to, if you want to stay in the loop, hit subscribe. But if you have a question you want me to ask Coach Mark in an upcoming video, let us know. And actually make a little comment if you're okay for us to shout out and use your name. Because if you like, we can say who the question came from and say your location, because this thing is it's you know it, YouTube. It's quite global, so it'd be fantastic to get questions coming in from afar. But Coach Mark, the question I've got for you today, and I think it's really good timing coming into the new year, because what I tend to do, and I imagine a lot of runners do this too, is we think, what sort of goals, what sort of achievements, what events do we want to do in the new year? So I'll certainly be planning 2024 soon. But you've probably got some really good advice for us in terms of, well, what sort of things should we consider? Because I know we might oversubscribe the number of events we go to, the number of races we target. So there's probably some key things we need to think about. What do you think, Coach Mark? What are the sorts of things we should be considering, the factors we should be thinking about as we start to plan our goals for 2024?
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic question, this, and goals, of course, are key to give you running purpose and motivation. So you can't go past a good goal. Things to bear in mind that if you're picking a goal, you're basically saying, I want to be at my best for this particular event. So that's really something you need to bear in mind. So automatically you're thinking, well, I need a bit of lead time to get ready for this, and also you can't be at your best, the best you can be every week. So
How
you
long
need
is
to
that
space these
window?
goals out. What's that? Sorry, Darcy.
How long is that window where you can be at your best?
Yeah, well. Again, this depends. It depends on
Okay.
how on your basically your endurance base, which is why you see all the training sessions I give. Endurance is the number one priority all the way through, because if you have a good endurance base, you can you can hold your form for longer. You can do a fast race or a good hard race, and you can recover quickly, and you can back that up to the point. Elite runners, they can hold what they call a peak uh, for maybe 2 months. Absolute
Okay.
peak, and either
Okay.
side of that, even stretching out to maybe 3 months. So that's something to bear in mind. You need that good endurance base. You can hold good form for quite a while, but it's worth bearing in mind. So if you've got a very long event you're aiming for, so say marathon or beyond,
Okay.
um, really you can't realistically hope to perform your best at one of those more than maybe 3 times a year. Um, and and for shorter events, less than 30 minutes. So you could maybe in your peak sort of time, you could have a peak where you're doing maybe every 1 to 2 weeks you're performing at your best. If you build up to that period. Um, but as long as you bear that in mind, that you can't be at your peak all the time. But you can have goals leading up to your main goal, for example. So you might have a main goal. Say you have a main goal in June. Say it's New Year. and you wake up in the morning, right, I'm going to set my goals. You could say split your year into two and say, okay, there's a big event in June I want to aim for, or it might be March, April, something like that. I'm gonna build up to that, and then I might have this other event maybe a month before that, and maybe 3 weeks before that one. I might have another event, and you may not be at your best, but the idea is that you should be building up to that event. If you see what I mean, they're all part of the plan. In other words, they sort of help you towards your major goal, and as a bonus, you also will hopefully get to do well in those events as well.
Perfect.
So it's the big goals with interim goals on the way. Yeah.
So it really is. It depends. I get that as an answer, and that's always a good answer to hear because nothing's absolute, right? But what I'm hearing, it depends. But if we're talking marathons, you're looking at 2, maybe 3 a year. If you're talking 30-minute events, some people that might be a 5K, some people that might be a 10K event, then you can be talking greater numbers and having some almost sort of back to back within that peak period. And that doesn't mean that's your only racing, especially if we're talking marathons. So if we're talking 2 or 3 a year, that's not your only racing. You can do other races leading up to it, but you just won't be. There'll be lead up races. There'll be sometimes I think people call them the B race, the A races, the peak, and they can do B races. And I imagine one of the things you need to be conscious of is in your B race, there's a purpose why you're doing it, as opposed to a performance metric you're trying to hit, or you're not trying to hit a PB. So I imagine you can take pressure off yourself, being cognizant that you're running that race for a specific purpose. It might be to test your legs over a period of time. I don't know. Actually, let me turn that around and pitch that to you as a question, Coach Mark. What sorts of things would we want to test in our B races that aren't our peak races, to know that we're going sort of okay-ish sort of thing?
Yeah. So you can for example, say it's a marathon you're doing, you might run a half marathon. So you could approach that 2 ways. You could run it at marathon pace.
Right.
So you're testing out how you're tracking at marathon pace without it taking as much out of you, obviously, as a marathon. So you can then get back into your training without having to have a 4-week recovery afterward. You can test your how your pacing is, even pacing, for example, your concentration, wearing the particular equipment you're going to be wearing in the go. You're trialing all that out. I mean, that's particularly important if you're doing a big off-road event. Practicing fueling, practicing tactics is a big one. In the shorter events, especially if you're doing track events, you can practice tactics and race experience. Because you can't come out. I mean, no one can come out and expect to run their absolute optimum straight off the bat without having some trial, races beforehand.
Yep.
So that's where they play a role. And you can do. So say you're aiming for a half marathon. Well, say you're aiming for a 10K. That's a good one to say, because you can then do an under distance 5K event where you actually run faster than a 10K. So that gets your speed up. You might run a half marathon race, which is longer and slower, but it tests your endurance a bit more. And then the 10K is in the middle. So you're covering training aspects from both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
And it all goes together. So if you've got a big goal, one big goal or maybe 2 big goals at the end of all this, all your other races have a bit of a purpose, and it gives them a bit of meaning. Can take the pressure off them as well, because it's all about learning for the big test, like having mock exams before the big one.
So when we talk about the big one, and when we talk about a marathon, maybe doing 2 or 3 a year, which not for me. I'm not a marathon runner. A half marathon will be the longest I'll do, and I like my 10K races. But let's use the marathon as an example. If we're doing 2 or 3 a year, we're not doing them in one peak period. We're breaking up our year, are we? Or should we, irrespective of whether we're doing half marathons, or even 10Ks, should we break up the year and look at it as components, or should we look at it as one big unit when we're picking the races that we want to do?
Yeah, I find it really good to split your year into, say, 2 or 3 blocks.
Okay.
So maybe at the end of that block is your big event that you're really aiming for. Then you have interim events and other things where you can plan to also do well. At the end of that block, you can keep that going. You can keep that what to call peak going for maybe a month or more if your endurance is good. But then it's quite important to have a little down period to sort of recover, reset, and then you build up for your next goal again. You can't maintain that level the whole way. So again, that just depends on how much endurance you have. I mean, but even the elite runners always have a period of the year where they have a real down period. For them, that might just mean they've trained once a day instead of twice a day.
But it's still a big difference for them. So we should have a big difference.
A big difference for them, exactly. That's right. But for many of us, it could be just 2 to 3 weeks, just jogging and walking or doing whatever you feel like to get the freshness back and the motivation, and then build again. And you haven't. It's not like you've lost. It's not like you've lost everything you've done in the previous block. You're not starting back at square one. That's important to stress.
Yeah, I think people, and I know one, that, we hear 2 to 3 weeks off and we tend to freak out a little bit. But you're saying 2 to 3 weeks, don't worry. And I remember I was watching something on YouTube and they were interviewing one of the top runners, and I forget their name. It might come back to me. And they said they just take 2 or 3 weeks where they do absolutely nothing. And I was surprised by that, but I was pleased to hear it. And I suppose it's about just making sure, or just letting it cement in your mind that that's okay. And so it's really great to hear from you, Coach Mark. 2 to 3 weeks, don't worry about it. You're going to be doing it 2 or 3 times a year too. And that's what differentiates your blocks. You need that period where you just relax and let the body fully revitalize, as well as the energy physically and mentally to fuel the desire to run again.
It's quite a good idea as well, just before your big goal, to already have the other goal in your mind penciled in, the next goal, because then that gives you that kind of continuing purpose, and you also then can have a break after the big goal, knowing that you've got this sort of purpose in mind and you're leading to the next goal. You're not finishing it and then going, well, what now? And you can get almost a bit depressed that you've achieved that goal and there's no purpose now in your training, in your running. Yeah. So that's quite a good thing to do.
So last question, I'll bounce off you, because something else I think I've just picked up on. Sorry, everybody who's watching that. I've just got a bit of a drippy nose. I struggled with the idea of, say, focusing on a 10K race, running that 10K race, and then the day after going, great, 2 weeks off and then back into it. And I struggled with that idea because I thought, no, I'm in the best form of,
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. What can I do with that? So, what I always wanted to, or not always wanted to do, what I tend to do is you do that 10K race, and then I might smash out a couple of park runs or something. I'm not racing anyone else. Can I get my 5K PB off the back of the 10K race because, it's not overtaxing my body or something like that. Coach Mark, from your perspective, just saying that's fine. If you're, if you're on the river and you're going great and your peak hasn't been more than a couple of weeks, strap on a couple of other things, like some 5K races at the end of a 10K, or if you've, I can't talk to a marathon because I know that's pretty draining, but let's say 10K races or 5K races, do a few more, and then, use all that, but then start to wind it down a little bit and refresh yourself for the new one. But anyway, sorry, my question is, you do your 10K race, that's your priority. You've got a couple more weeks up your sleeve that you can use that speed you've got to do a few other things.
By all means, by all means, yeah. You're in the shape of your life. Go for it. you'll soon know if you're coming down the other side of the hill, because how you perform in those other races. You'll know if you do a race and you're actually, now I feel like I've come down the other side. I'm actually getting slower now, and that will happen if you continue to do races. That would happen without having the break. But if you're still, you've had a good endurance base up to it. You've smashed out a brilliant 10K. You think, yeah, I still feel in great shape. I'm gonna do 5K next week, and that's fine. There's quite likely you'll run a stormer there. You might have another one in you as well. You might try a third one, and halfway through go, nah, I think it was one too many. And then your body, you get to know yourself pretty well. It's often body and mind as well. When your mind says you've had enough, it means your body has probably had enough, and a little break will do you wonders.
Well, let's talk about that in our very next video, actually. Let's expand on it and go, how do we know when the running's getting unhealthy? When we're going into not just but we're going right into, everything's going backwards on us. And that's frustrating, and I think we tend to train harder. Let's talk about that right in our next video. So look, thank you for those that are watching and you made it to the end of the video. Stay around. Click subscribe and you'll get our next video where we'll talk exactly about that. What are the warning signs that we're overcooking ourselves and will actually benefit by having a rest? We'll benefit by having a rest. And I repeated that twice because I think what we tend to think when we get tired like that and we get slow is we think, how can I train better? How do I train harder? And better can sometimes mean less. I don't know, but that's the question I'm going to throw to you, Coach Mark, soon. Coach Mark, just before we wrap, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it.
Awesome. Yeah, that was rich, full of insights. Like what I loved is how you talked about breaking up the year. Too often I think of the year as a big block in terms of the fact that we can peak a number of times during the year. And once we've hit the peak, it doesn't mean we have to put the brakes on straight away. We can use that top performance that we've attained to do a few other things. That resting really benefits us, that differentiates between the peaks. And by and large, look, if we're looking at running for the marathon runners out there, you're picking about 2 or 3 a year. And if you're doing slightly shorter distances, a few more. It really depends, but having a number of races, but only a few of those are going to be your focus races, and a few others are going to be build-ups or just on the tail end doing something else while you've got that peak performance. Coach Mark, thank you so much for those insights. I'm ready to start planning next year, and I'll let you know what I'll be doing. And if you want to get in contact with Coach Mark to help you with your training for next year, all the details, Coach Mark's email is in the show notes. So just click on the show notes just below this. That drop-down arrow pops up there. All the details are in there. If you've got any questions you want us to ask Coach Mark, drop them in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. And we'll catch you in the next one where we're going to talk about the warning signs of when you're running too much and you'll be faster doing it. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Take care.
See ya.